everyone! Welcome once again to Flash Discussions. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing pretty well now that my internet's working and I can see you this time.
Yeah. Wave to the audience, Dan. Yeah,
Hi, everybody.
that's Dan Torrey, the most politically minded man alive. Oh.
I wouldn't say that. But I do think like that, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I was just like fastest man alive. I was trying to think like, what can I make Dan?
That's true.
Yeah, what can I make Dan?
Captain Politarang or something.
Politarang. That's somebody. Would you give the audience, anybody who wants to, permission to draw that guy? Because
that would be awesome. And you can include this button I have next to my computer that says Democracy Matters.
Okay, let's go ahead and get into the show, shall we? Second episode of Flash, fastest man alive, and
yes.
Dan, I hope I didn't like offend you when I said that you were politically minded.
No, not at all. I concede that I am politically minded.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
Anyway, so fastest man alive. Before that, we're going to talk a little bit about the pilot again, in going to some of your questions and comments. Lots and lots of comments from last time. I'm going to cherry pick a little bit, and let's begin with Ben Wheeler, who said, Cap, in hindsight, they gave us a big hint about Harrison Wells' true nature. His initial is H. Wells. And H.G. Wells not only wrote The Time Machine, but in Lois and Clark was actually a time traveler himself. I somehow did not remember his name was Wells while I was watching it. I didn't pick up on it. I only had the chance to watch it the one time. Anytime you have somebody in a show that you already know has time travel involved and their name is Wells, you must be suspicious of them. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I'm with you. My suspicion that he's Hunter Zolomon, or at least some sort of version of Arrowverse Flash, gets, I get more and more suspicious of it the more I watch this guy on screen. I think the actor is fantastic.
Oh, he's brilliant, isn't he? He's probably my top 3 of best things about the show so far. He's very strong. I think that his acting rivals anything in Arrow. I mean, he is just as good as the best actors we've had in this universe. I think he's fantastic.
And I think that's saying something, too. I think the show in general has a very strong cast. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the general overview. But I love a lot of the actors in this show. I'm surprised to like them as much as I did.
Yeah, his screen presence is phenomenal, and that's very difficult to do in a wheelchair. I think it's important to mention that.
Point.
George Simmons, hey Cap, do you think they'll mix villains from the Flash and Arrow? I think I heard something about Clock King popping up in Flash, but not sure. Also, if so, do you think it would be a good idea? Well, yes, of course I want to see that. Yeah, especially because Clock King is my favorite thing in Arrow. Their Clock King is so cool. And yes, I have read that Clock King is supposed to be in an upcoming episode of Flash. That's really exciting. And yeah, team-ups with some of these characters. Throw Vertigo with Boomerang or someone, or Captain Politarang or whatever. I would, I'm very excited about that, and I think that you don't have to stray too much away in the Flash from cross-pollination like you sometimes do in other sequels, because sometimes sequels want to stand on their own, spin-offs. Spin-off shows a lot of the time want to kind of stand on their own, especially after a certain amount of time. So like they'll kind of go back to the well and use a lot of characters from the other show in order to keep people interested. I think The Flash sells itself pretty well. We're already hearing a lot of folks watching the show that have not cared about Arrow, have not really watched much Arrow, and but at the same time, this being more of a comic book thing, I think a lot of us comic book fans are really used to characters crossing and getting to see that, and we kind of want to see that. So I think that in some ways you want these shows to be separate, and in some ways I think you really want them to come together too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a fantastic idea to have a guy named Clock King in the show about time travel. That just makes so much sense to me.
Didn't think of that. Yes, of course.
I mean, I haven't seen the version of Clock King that's in Arrow yet, but I heard you and Eric talk a little bit about him. I think I watched the Arrow discussions where he showed up because I wanted to hear how much you loved this version, because I know that's one of your favorite characters, and he sounds like he'd fit in pretty well here.
The only big complaint I have about Clock King so far is that I have no sense whatsoever yet that he's going to be a seasoned big bad. and that just needs to happen. I will not be satisfied until Clock King is the season big bad in one of these shows.
Harrison Wells is actually Clock King from the future.
You'd think. I know that I am sounding like I'm not like taking what I can get, but because I asked for Clock King and I got Clock King, and now I'm asking for more, but I don't know. Their Clock King is so good. I need more of it. I really do. I need it every week. I need Clock King. It's so good. I will not be satisfied. Yeah. Anyway, so Work in progress. It took me a minute because there's like letters and numbers and things. It's a good username. Well done. What if Barry's father turns out to be the Reverse Flash? That would make the reason for him being in Barry's house that night to try to save his wife, and his taking the young Barry 20 blocks away was to keep him safe, but in trying to change the past, he ends up guaranteeing his future. The only question I have with that is then how does he get sinister?
Yeah, and I don't know, I think the whole season arc of Barry trying to save his father would be severely undercut if he was trying to save a maniacal evil person the whole time. I don't know, like, and I think they've already set up enough clues with Wells in this show with the first 2 episodes where he wants to keep Barry safe kind of at all costs. Like we see at the stinger at the end of this episode, he murders someone to keep Barry safe. So obviously he has an incentive to keep Barry safe for some reason, and even in this time period he does. So if my theory is correct and he ends up being the Reverse Flash, I see that working without his father having to be involved in any capacity. So I don't know. I would kind of resist if they went there. I wouldn't really like that.
I could see it working depending on what the future was, because it wouldn't necessarily undercut too much that Barry's trying to save his father if it's like this totally different futuristic version, because then we have two versions of his father and the other one's not him, and then we can play with identity stuff. And I always really enjoy that kind of thing, where you have like another version of a character where it's like, oh man, am I actually capable of this, or would my life have to go a certain way, whatever it is. So like I could kind of see that happen, but it seems like it would be really hard to like contrive a thing that I would buy that would also make him put on a Flash costume and hate his son and hate the Flash. I don't know how that would work. Possible, very unlikely, I think. Okay, I got a lot of comments about this, Dan. We should address it. Excuse me, Kakarot134, guys, you're wrong. Iris has reasons for keeping her relationship with Eddie a secret. She said at least one reason in the show. Also, both actors were good in the prison scene. You guys need to watch the episode again. Well, first of all, I said both actors were good in the prison scene. I really liked that.
I watched it 3 times and didn't like it all 3 times. So, fair enough.
Yeah, but yeah, regarding the relationship being a secret thing, that was an issue you had that I wasn't even really thinking all that much about and latching onto.
See, I don't think it works even if the explanation is that Iris thinks it would be unprofessional.
Yeah, that was it. See, I couldn't remember what the explanation was. I just was not even thinking about that. That was not an aspect that I was latching onto. Sorry.
I just don't think that works at all. Like, it just makes them seem like unsympathetic people, because like, if Iris lies to her dad because she thinks the relationship would be unprofessional, it makes her look terrible either way. She keeps the secret from her dad, she looks terrible. If she tells him and stays in the relationship, she kind of looks, I don't know, not really that good either. So at least if she was truthful with her dad and they tried to have a conversation about it, they might be able to work something out. Like, I don't know. I just don't think it's very healthy or sympathetic to keep something that like that secret from somebody. It's just very strange. And in this episode specifically, like, they act like it's a secret in front of Barry, and he takes my perspective where he's like, guys, you don't really have to keep this a secret. And they're like, oh, thanks, Barry. And then they start making out. And I'm like, why are they even keeping it a secret from Barry? He already knows. They seem to be keeping this relationship secret for arbitrary reasons.
Maybe they're but maybe they're just kind of used to trying to keep it, or maybe it's that, because I read read that scene more as they know Barry's uncomfortable with it because then after that although she does say, I know you think it's wrong for me to date someone I'm working with, and he said, no, that's not it at all, and she still doesn't know what it is. None of that relationship stuff am I latching onto yet. I can't get excited about it even. Mostly because I know it's not gonna last. It's the sort of thing where I'm not even that interested to see how it changes. You know what I mean? Like I know that at some point she's gonna find out he's the Flash, and at some point she's gonna find out that he cares about her in that way, and I'm kind of just waiting for the shoe to fall when that happens, because things don't get interesting until that happens, I don't think.
It's just weird to me because Eddie is a different character when he's in relationship scenes with Iris, because he's this very confident, sure of himself kind of guy that feels like, exclude the fact that he's going to be a supervillain eventually, because that's the name of a Reverse Flash, and Barry's archenemy specifically, he's the second Reverse Flash. The way they played him so far is he seems like a guy that's kind of on the up and up. He's an honest guy, like he's good at his job. He seems like a very likable person. What does that say about him as a man if he doesn't tell the father of the girl he's dating that he's dating her, and he keeps it a secret, and he's afraid of offending Barry Allen when he's like that? I just don't feel like that's in his character. Like, I feel like that guy would, in the presence of someone knows that the relationship is uncomfortable, he wouldn't really care. That's his girlfriend. Barry's going to have to be okay with it at some point, so he's got to start to get used to it anyway,
Yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from. I didn't think that much about it myself just because it's so typical TV relationship stuff. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm having a hard time even caring.
Right? Yeah, and those are the reasons that I don't care about it. Like I was thinking about why don't I care about these two people together, and those are the reasons that I came up with.
I just now thought of this, and sometimes I think of things and I go, I don't know if I'm right about this, so I'm gonna throw this out and you tell me what you think. Guys in superhero things named Eddie seem to always end up being bad guys, and I feel like this guy would make an okay Eddie Brock.
Oh yeah, you're right. He would. He kind of looks like him.
He looks a little bit like Eddie Brock. Yeah, he's built like that. He's blonde. I think it could totally work.
You're onto something there.
Yeah.
If they use Eddie Brock at some capacity and whatever Sony has planned for Spider-Man at some point.
This guy could go down in history as the character actor who plays villains named Eddie in superhero shows. Yeah, I think that should happen. I thought this comment was really cool. EmoKid64, who comments a lot. I never knew this about him. I love learning things about our regular subscribers that I talk to all the time.
They're the best.
Really neat.
You guys rock.
We have really, really neat, insightful, thoughtful folks that watch us and talk to us, and this guy had a really cool comment. He said, as someone who used to work at the NYPD,
wow, that's awesome.
That police sketch was done in record time. It usually takes an hour and a half, or an hour to a half an hour, and looked too much like comic book art than the police sketches that I've seen done. Yeah. Isn't that cool?
So I was more right than I thought I was. Well, that's awesome that he used to work at the NYPD. I've never talked to anyone that's worked in a police department that big. That's really cool.
He said that he's not just about this guy, because I thought it was cool. He said he's not a cop. He wants to be a cop. It sounds like he wants to be a cop, and that he was a cadet, and which is kind of like a college intern. And he said he wants to be, or he was looking at being a police sketch artist, but that is a detective level job with seniority, so they're gun carrying artists. I didn't know that.
Wow.
So now we know more about police sketch artists than we've ever known, and clearly than the people making these shows know. Because they've done the same thing in Arrow. Let's see, what else? One second. Manta Blu-ray, I love the characters, the world, the special effects, just not the episode itself. It's a very basic origin story, but a catalyst to one hell of a sci-fi superhero show. I can see why you'd say that. I can see why you'd say it's sort of typical. I think I'm enjoying the way in which it's going back to the well. Because it's just doing it really well and making it feel fresh to me again, and like I keep saying, I'm kind of a sucker for really good role models, so like that is really helping dragging me along.
Yeah, I think the plot was really typical, but I think the characters were distinct enough that I was able to latch onto it. Like the supervillain in the pilot's really generic, and we'll talk about the villain in this too. I thought they were all really generic too, but the character stuff was what I really latched onto.
Me too.
In this episode
and
too.
That seems to be very par for the course for these guys now. There's a lot of that with Arrow too, where I'm like, I kind of feel like I've seen, like, every now and again they'll mix things up, and I'll go, wow, I didn't see that coming. But sometimes they'll do episodes where I'm like, I really like that, and I feel like it went exactly the way I expected it to. But I cared about the characters, and they were alive for me. So maybe the plot seemed cookie cutter, but you you give depth to the characters, and it's hard for me to care as much. Hey, the Batman. We got a comment from the Batman. Hey, Cap, did you catch the Wayne Tech Queen Consolidated merger line in the 2024 newspaper? Apparently, the writers had to fight WB-DC real hard to include that little line in there, which seemingly confirms that this universe has a Bruce Wayne. Yeah, I feel like I've talked about this on the show. Did we talk about that? I thought we did. Yeah. Okay. So that person must have left that comment, having not heard the rest of it. Yes, we did talk about that. Okay. I was just sitting there like, we do so many of these now, I can't always remember when I'm talking on camera and off camera, and I was like, wait a minute, didn't we discuss that? No, we were very excited about that possibility. That seemed like a really cool potential thing. Okay, let's go ahead and discuss this episode, Fastest Man Alive. And Dan, would you? I'm just, every time I hear that now, I'm reminded of Vince did a Christopher Walken as the DC Universe video several years ago, and
both of those, the Marvel and the DC one, are fantastic.
He had this line when I threw the Flash at him, and he said something about being the fastest man alive, not the fastest man back from the dead, and that's why it took so long to resurrect the character. I thought that was really funny. Anyway, so Dan, give me a couple things that you thought really worked in this episode.
I loved everything about the Joe West and Barry Allen relationship in this.
Me too, and I'm sorry, real quick, can I also tack on that?
Yeah, sure.
I didn't think I was going to.
Yeah.
Can I say that? Like early on, it just seemed like kind of the obvious thing to do, and I was afraid they were going to stretch it out for episodes and episodes. When Wes starts saying that you need to not be a, like, I was grabbing onto, this is kind of unusual that we've got the father figure that already knows. I've been really excited about that. You know what I mean? That he finds out that early. He's in that cop Gordon place, but he's also the man who raised him. So it's really different. It's cool merging those things together, and I feel like I'm in a place I haven't really been before. And then maybe it's somewhere, but I haven't seen it much, and I think that's really cool. And then when he's like, you can't do all of this. You can't be here. You're not a cop. I was really afraid that where they were going to go with it was he was going to be the big thing standing in Barry's way of being a superhero for like several episodes, and I did not want to see that because I just thought that could get like. I thought that they would accidentally make me not like him by constantly having him stand in the way of it, even though I buy his reasons. I get he's trying to keep his son safe. Yeah. When they got to the end, Dan, with the donuts or with the pizza.
The pizza, yeah.
I teared up. I did. It was really good.
I wrote that down as my favorite scene in the whole episode, and we can talk a little bit more about it when we get there.
Yeah.
But I just loved everything about the development that those two got in this episode, because it's all kind of about Joe loves this kid in a way that it doesn't even matter to him that Barry kind of hasn't reciprocated that love. And like initially, you see Barry as a kid in the flashbacks, like not reciprocating that at all. He kind of hates him and resents him because he's the guy that's standing in the way between him and his father. And you feel really bad for Joe West. Because like the actor in this came alive for me. I loved the guy who plays Joe West in this even more than that was in the pilot.
Yeah.
With this episode, he's become one of my favorite characters in the show and one of my favorite actors in the show. And you can see in his performance that he's just trying to do the best he can to raise this kid, even though he's not really his. There's no right for either of them to really have any sort of relationship with each other. But Joe's the one that wants to make it work, and Barry's kind of always pushing him away. And it's kind of an interesting parallel with like what Iris does to Barry in a romantic way. But like, you know, the father-son thing reciprocated with Barry and Joe. It's sort of interesting. Because Barry wants...
I hadn't thought about it like that. That's a good call. Where yes, how did I not think of that? Thank you. Where Barry, I almost said Oliver. That's gonna happen. Where Barry wants to think of her as a potential lover, and you've got a father figure that thinks of himself as a father figure, and maybe Barry doesn't. Except that in the second episode we've already resolved that.
Yeah, I was very impressed that they did it that quickly.
Yes, me too.
And I just really liked that Barry comes out and says that, like, you know, this guy has been more of a father to him, even more than his actual father has been throughout his whole life. Not that he still doesn't love his father. His father didn't do things for him before his mother was killed. But I just really like that we get to the conclusion by the end where these people, you know, make that agreement and resolve that kind of thing. It's really, really good. And I think the two actors, the chemistry between the two of them is fantastic. And that helped a lot with not that the lines that they had weren't, you know, not that they were bad or anything, but yeah. I think they did a lot with what they were given, you know what I mean? Like, that pizza scene had the potential to be really corny, but I think the way the actors played it was great, and I think they made more out of it than it could have been, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so bear with me for a minute, because this is going to be loopy. But I just thought of something potentially interesting, and
sure, go ahead.
And this is one of those things that is only, like, I think vaguely there, but I think this is interesting. You remember how you and I last week were talking about how like you were seeing a lot of Spider-Man in the show, and we should talk about Spider-Man stuff, because I'm seeing more of it this episode. But we were talking about Spider-Man stuff, and then I was seeing a little bit more Superman, or more Captain America, really. But I was seeing more Superman, and you were seeing more Spider-Man. And this is probably not intentional, but what you were saying just about how he still loves his real father, but he's not the one who raised him. It's almost like a Jonathan Kent Jor-El situation. Like he's got the father that's still there who raised him, who has to acknowledge that he's not his real father, and there's a little bit of pain there because he kind of wishes that he was, and he wishes that his son looked at him more that way. But then he's got his real father who is only sort of around, because we always have that with, like, the Jor-El computer thing, and his being in jail is almost like Jor-El being alive but not being alive. And I mean, all of that will break down as soon as he gets released from prison, but I'm just saying right now it sort of feels that way. It's kind of, I don't know.
It feels to me, the place my mind went, just because my mind is comic book things is Spider-Man oriented all the time, I guess. It reminded me of the take that the Amazing Spider-Man first movie kind of took with Uncle Ben.
Yep, and that's where I was going to go with it, yeah.
Where Richard Parker is more of a figure in Peter's life than he was in the original origin, and Uncle Ben and him have that tension. And the same thing with Aunt May being a surrogate mother in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. That stuff is there too. So I like all that stuff, and it's interesting that Barry Allen's a character that never really had this stuff before Flash Rebirth. Like, this is kind of a new invention. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, will we ever see a Barry that didn't have this aspect of his life, potentially, like, in an alternate flashback or something? Because, like, the Reverse Flash is changing time, and for what reason did he feel the need to go back and kill Barry's parents? How does that change him in the future? You know what I mean? I think the interesting thing will be, and I think this is going to be kind of the positive message of the show, and this is where I hope they go with it, is even if you give Barry Allen a tragic past, he still ends up being the optimistic person that he is no matter what, because that's just who he is, right? I hope that's what it ends up being.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, I still think he has, even though he has somewhat of a tragic past, it's very different from some of your, like, really angsty characters where, like the worldview that he has right now does seem to be somewhat developed and honed because of the past that he had. But you're right, but he could be more brutish, couldn't he? You know what I mean?
Definitely. And we talked about that in the first discussion. Like, he took a tragedy and made something extremely positive out of it.
Yeah.
He worked really hard. He you know, it's not like, you know, Batman, a kid who was born into privilege and kind of developed a psychosis and dressed up like a bat and beat up criminals at night. Like, Barry Allen, the first thing he tried to do was become a really intelligent forensic scientist and try to use his mind to figure out how his past was shaped in the first place.
Yeah.
He channeled all of that potential negativeness into what at least society views as something extremely positive, and I would have to agree with society in that aspect, right? I think going to school and using that kind of motivation to become a hotshot forensic scientist that's really good at what you do, that's very admirable.
Yeah, and like the choices that he's made are it isn't just the really simplistic somebody in my past died and so I'm like this really angst-ridden person and no matter who I was then I would become that way.
Right.
If this had happened to Oliver Queen earlier in his life, he would have been very different because of choices he'd already made. You know what I mean? Like he was already a certain kind of person, and so I think the idea is that with Bruce Wayne it would be it's supposed to be kind of the same thing too. Like Bruce Wayne is a kid who has this he has a lot of opulence in his life. He's like he has rich parents and he lives in this great big house, but that's not who he is. He already hates the city he lives in. You know what I mean? He already hates that it's so corrupt, and or at least in a lot of different versions. And so he turns into the person he is. And Barry Allen is just already this really positive person who wants to see the best in people, and that's why he trusts his dad when other people don't.
Right.
Even before he has any kind of evidence at all.
Right. I think it's very interesting that we have a character that has a parent killed in the past, and he gets one taken away from him. So it's potentially the same kind of thing as Batman to some degree. It's a little bit different.
It's different.
It is different, but you see a character removed from their family at an early age. Barry Allen's mother's death and his father's arrest made him curious. It didn't make him angry. It didn't make him sad. It made him curious about the world around him. And I think that's really interesting. A really interesting reaction to a tragedy, right? Like, most people would be angry. He became curious about the impossible and those sorts of things. I think that's really cool.
I mean, chip on a shoulder is too strong of a word. I would say that it does go somewhat beyond curiosity. I mean, I think that he hates that other people don't agree with him about his dad, but I think it's because it's not that he's angry with them, it's that he sees people as for what they are. They're kind of close-minded, you know. They if only everybody was as curious and interested in the world around them as he was, maybe they could see what he does, but people don't think like he does.
Right, and his way of thinking and the way he perceives other people is born out of that curiosity. I'm talking about initially, like after his parents are killed day one, the reason he becomes who he is because that murder made him a curious person. Or maybe he was already, right? Like that's the thing that I think this season is going to deal with. It goes back to the how this conversation started, at least at this part of the character, is can you take the curiosity out of Barry Allen by killing his mother? I think the answer is no.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right about that. Well, it makes him more that way.
Exactly.
That makes sense. The Stag guy, and I should have looked up more comic book stuff. I'm sure he's a comic book character. I don't know him.
He is a comic book character. I looked it up. He's Firestorm. He first appeared in his Firestorm comic, and he's been a DC Universe villain here and there throughout, popping in and out of things. And didn't they announce the Firestorm? Then they actually mentioned him in here.
They mentioned him in here. Yeah, Ronnie is mentioned. He's
Robbie Raymond is the
Robbie Raymond. Yeah, well, and he's already been cast. We know he's going to be in the show, and right. So Ronnie was mentioned, and he's mentioned as supposedly being dead. I think we have to assume that the particle accelerator changed him like it did Flash. And I'm glad they're going there, not just because it's going to be fun to see some other superheroes, because we're already getting the Atom in Arrow. We've introduced him in the first episode, and we know that he's supposed to be in Flash here pretty quick. Also because of the big thing I said last week about the particle accelerator, which is I don't want it to create nothing but bad guys except for Barry Allen. There have to be some other half-decent people that got changed by the thing. Otherwise, the optimism of the show doesn't work at all.
We live in Central City. There's still good people left. This isn't Gotham.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's the good, wholesome Midwest. Yes. And most of the bad guys seem to be evil scientists so far. Or
really generic people that don't have characters.
That's true. Or both. or both, because the clone guy, Cineplex, no, Multiplex.
Yeah.
No,
Captain Clone, as he's initially called. That was hilarious.
That was just a joke. Because that was just a joke, because every time I think of Multiplex, I'm like, oh, so he has movie theater powers. but anyway, so we got a lot of Firestorm in this episode. Like Ronnie has mentioned, Multiplex is a Firestorm villain. I found that out while I was tweeting. I didn't know that, and I was a little bit surprised that second episode out we're suddenly doing all this Firestorm stuff because of the thing I said last week, which was we don't have to go to other places with Flash. Flash has got his own thing. He's got his own rogues gallery. I'm glad they're bringing other things in. I mean, that's totally cool. And I think that these are people that are giddy to get to do DC Comics. So they're like, we want to do the stuff that we couldn't do in Arrow. We couldn't do Firestorm in Arrow, but we can do them here. Are you on board with that kind of stuff? Is that...
I don't have any affinity for Firestorm as a character whatsoever. As much as I love Jerry Conway, the guy who made him, apparently, the guy that wrote Amazing Spider for a long time and who wrote The Death of Gwen Stacy, great writer. I just haven't read any Firestorm, so I don't know anything about him and don't really care about the character, really. I kind of want to see more rogue setup stuff. I want to see some Flash villains come in. And I thought this guy was really generic and didn't have all that much of a character. I feel like the villains in this episode, Stag and Multiplex, were the weakest parts of it by far.
I'm going to disagree with you on Stag for two reasons. First of all, I'm going to sort of disagree with you on Stag. If he hadn't gotten murdered, because he had the potential
got developed more. I liked the actor a lot, and I thought some of the things that they were potentially seeding with him were interesting. And one of my favorite lines is about kind of his character. But he gets murdered, so there's nothing they can possibly do with him in the future.
Yeah, I mean, he is kind of your typical philanthropist guy that's supposed to be really altruistic and doing good things for people with his money, but then it turns out that he's actually doing really shady things. Nobody was surprised when he turned out to be not be as good as he pretended to be. Especially because he is played by a character actor who has a track record of playing these kind of turncoat characters. He was one of my favorite characters in Deep Space Nine. That is Luther Sloan, the Section 31 agent, and I really like that guy. So I was excited to see him, and I wish he had to get killed off right away. At the same time, that scene was awesome. I mean, Wells comes in and kills him, and we're learning. I was going to say we're learning more about Wells. I think it's more that we're just confirming that there is a really deep-seated darkness to this guy. Last episode, I didn't mention any comments, but there were a few people in the comments who said, I think it's too early to jump the gun and say that he's going to be the big bad or whatever. And I think it is still too early to say he's the big bad. But he could be doing bad things to do good. But you have a show
like the Reverse Flash.
But if you have a show that is, if you have a show that is all about this really good person who upholds ideals and these sorts of old fashioned always help people. He tries to save the bad guy at the end, regardless of the fact that he's a 2-dimensional character with no personality. He still tries to save him. When you have a character like that, you can't also in the same show really have a character who murders people for any reason whatsoever and have me say, okay, he's not a villain because he kills people for the right reasons. That's not going to happen in this show. So we are confirming that.
This is not the Punisher HBO show.
They are also showing us with that scene that they're willing to do the darker Arrow stuff. Because we do see the kill on screen. It is a stabbing. I keep saying that this is a family show. Maybe they're not going to allow it to get as dark as Arrow does. I don't think it's too dark. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they're not going to rein in those moments when they feel like there's weight there and they need to have that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm glad that they did go there. That Wells. Because there's something inherently crazy about knife killing. Like, when someone kills someone with a gun, you're like, oh, that guy's a thug. He's kind of lonesome. When somebody like gets up close and stabs someone with a knife, that's like, you know, serial killer, horror movie. Like just those images that are projected in your mind. You know, that projects a more evil image. I think in just because in pop culture, that's just what it's associated with, I guess.
I think it's because it's intimate. I think it's because it's because when you stab a person, you have to get close to them. It's almost flesh on flesh. You're right up at them. It's twisted, right? It's potentially twisted. You could have a knife killing where that's just the weapon a person has. They stab a person. They don't think about it. They go away. When the killer lingers, that's when it's twisted. Somebody if you get stabbed, and the guy is watching the life seep out of you and is like either getting off on that or just paying attention to it. That is different from killing someone from far away. It's a distance thing.
Yes, that's a very good point.
So yeah, and I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right. And I think that's why whenever you see a knife killing, it feels a lot more graphic than a gunshot wound, regardless of the fact that they're both violent things.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I think it's also part of like our culture too, right? Because like before there were guns, like stabbing people was considered to be an honorable death kind of thing. Back in the day when swords were the only thing available.
Because it's personal.
But now that we're able to have that distance, people see knife killings as a more sinister thing. So yeah, I'm glad that they went there, but I'm with you too. I didn't think it was graphic enough that like I wouldn't potentially show that to like children that were old enough to watch and enjoy this show. I don't know, like I didn't think it was like either. You know, it wasn't like there was guts hanging out and like blood pouring all over the floor. It was just kind of like you saw a knife go into a guy's stomach or torso.
It wasn't electricity through her hand.
Right.
It wasn't that. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I'm with you. I wish that character had been a little more developed, partially just because I love that actor. And that's also been a narrow track record thing, too, where every now and again they'll bring in an actor that I love, and then they'll get killed off real quick, and then I'm like, oh, well, that was... You could have made that anybody. Save him for later.
I forget what other thing he was... He was in...
He was in Iron Man 3.
Yes, he was the president.
He was the president in Iron Man 3. And that, you know what? Iron Man 3, I was suspicious of him the whole frickin' movie, and then he turned out not to be bad. And I couldn't even believe it. I went through that entire movie, and I was like, he's the bad guy, he's the bad...
He's the Mandarin.
And in the end, he wasn't. He should have been the Mandarin. That would have been amazing. It wouldn't have made any sense at all, but it would have been amazing. What else? So we were talking about the kind of, I'm still calling typical love triangle stuff. You get to the end, and... she doesn't like being a journalist. By the way, can I just say that the journalist thing was really silly? Because, so Iris has a thing where she has to be a journalist, and she doesn't like being a journalist. So, here's what, I have a tendency to look at the furthest implications of things. She's not thinking when she says things. Because there's a scene where Iris is trying to get a quote from Stag. And he won't give her a quote, and then she just says, oh, I'll just make up something. And I went, okay, so you think that just because you don't like journalism means that you don't have any reason to have journalistic integrity? Oh, okay. I thought that was
pretty indicative of some journalists today, unfortunately.
I know, but I didn't feel like they were making any kind of an interesting or fun social commentary point. Yeah. I think they were just going, she doesn't like journalism. They were not thinking that through, and it's not a big deal. That is, I'm nitpicking when I throw that out there. I'm mostly making fun of it because I think it's hilarious. She's just like, I don't like journalism, so I don't need journalistic integrity, but... It does make me kind of think that she is, when she does things like that, I'm hearing people saying that she's ditzier than they want her to be. When you have characters that do things like that, it makes me feel like I have to empathize with them less, and I'm not supposed to, but it's just, they're accidentally making me like her less by doing stuff like that. And then you get to the end, and she has the very, very typical thing of the one thing I'm suddenly obsessing over is the superhero at the same time as my possible eventual boyfriend is that superhero, and I just can't get on board with it, cause not just because I've seen it 1,000 times, but just because I know it's not gonna. I feel like, just like with West, I feel like she needs to find out his identity next episode. That's where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah, they make a big deal about how Joe West specifically says that Iris is smarter than the excuses that Barry is making up, and Iris in the comic books, fully grown up Iris is a journalist. So it's kind of the typical thing of like, oh, she doesn't like being a journalist. That's where she's going to end up. Isn't that funny, guys?
I resist that.
I'm with you. I was kind of like, that's a little weak. I think the idea behind what they're trying to do is kind of admirable because I think what they're trying to do. I don't think it works as well as they think it does, but I think the idea is Iris finds her passion in life, what she does for a living, what she loves to do with herself because of Barry, and that's what will draw them together when she eventually finds out that he's the Flash. So it's more than just like, oh, he's a superpowered guy that saves people. I really like him. That's why I'm going to date him. It's like she finds the passion in life through him, sort of. But I'm with you. I think it's a little typical.
I mean, they can make me like it eventually, but...
Potentially, yeah, as long as they write it well. We're superhero guys. We're kind of here for the tropes to some degree, right?
To some degree. But the thing is,
when they do it the same way we've seen it every time...
I wouldn't be resisting it as much if this were the first show or if I hadn't watched Arrow. There are, I mean, I have a different, I have a different perspective on this than I would if I hadn't seen Arrow, because that show is not afraid of letting characters that you think they might wait forever on find out the identity of the superhero. And so when I'm asked to care about his keeping his secret from someone, and I know that they're actually kind of likely not to string it out forever, it's hard to really get on board with it, especially because, and I mean, like, here's the thing, there are things I like about it. I like that Barry wants to tell her, and that he just doesn't because he respects West, and West doesn't want her to know. Because I think it's kind of fun to have a superhero that doesn't care if everyone knows he's a superhero. I mean, like you kind of have that, and I think like he's probably smart enough to keep his secret identity from the public at large, just for the regular reasons that superheroes always have to do that, so that the villains don't come after their loved ones. But I kind of but I just feel like it's gonna happen pretty soon. But I don't know, like I guess right now where I'm at is, they need one token person for him to keep it from, because pretty much everybody else knows, and he has a secret identity, so he has to keep it from someone. Already, most of the main cast already knows. They didn't do it like that with Arrow. On the other hand, you couldn't already up front have the Flash backup team already in place without them knowing, and I really like that we don't have to spend a whole season building the Flash backup team like we did with Arrow. It's kind of nice that this time we get to just have it already set up there.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting potentially in the season going forward if, like, Barry tells too many people his secret identity and it backfires on him to some degree. Yeah. I think that would be an interesting kind of turn on its head kind of thing. Like the superhero, that's a typical, of a lot of superheroes, particularly like, Spider-Man, for example, like somebody finds out his secret identity, attacks his loved ones. Maybe Barry's not careful enough, and that kind of happens just because he figures out that he kind of has to keep secrets from people, and he resists that because he's such an honest person, And
isn't this episode already about that?
Yeah,
it's already about that. I mean, you've got Wells telling him to have restraint, and he wants to just he is such a pure-hearted guy that he does what he thinks is the right thing, even when he's not thinking about practicality. And I really like that. I think that's an endearing trait, but I also like that he's having to learn to be smarter. There's a couple of other big he and Arrow are different things that I want to talk about. And it's regarding that, and I kind of like how they're playing this. One of them is that Arrow started out, Oliver Queen started out becoming Green Arrow because of the new skills that he had developed, and because there was a particular thing he wanted to go do, and he knew he could do it because of what he'd learned. Flash has this thrown at him. The lightning chose him. Flash had, that line in an abstract way works in that the great power, great responsibility thing, where he just out of nowhere gets these powers, has to learn how to use them. If he doesn't use them, bad things could happen to people, but if he uses them without knowing what he's doing, he could make things worse. So I like that's a that's a contrast with Arrow that I like a lot. The other one is Oliver is a compulsive liar. He almost to the point of he enjoys it and he just doesn't know what else to do. He's so used to lying to people, and that gets him in trouble. This character has the exact opposite problem. He loves the truth. It's its favorite thing. He wants to put the fact that he's the Flash on a neon billboard. He's a completely different character. And again, I don't think that is annoying novelty of we've just got to make this other character completely different. I think that he is at the core of his comic book character the opposite of Oliver Queen, and I like that they're bringing those things to the forefront.
I think so too. I like that they get a lot of comedic mileage out of the fact that he's terrible at lying. Like, yes. In this episode, this is one of the things that I was hoping that he paid for the clothes that he took from that store. I'm not sure if he did. Like, if he stole those clothes from the store.
I think he paid for them. I mean, we don't know. But, like, the sense I got was that he went up to the counter, paid for them, went in the bathroom, put them on, or did it out in the middle of everybody, but just did it so fast nobody could tell, and then just still had the tags on him. I don't think he walked into that store and just put clothes on.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping, but we don't see it, so we don't really know. Yeah. But I'm with you. Like, if they keep the character consistent, it's not a big deal. It was just something that I thought was hilarious.
I didn't think of that.
Did he pay for those? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it was one of my favorite laugh moments in the show was when he walks into his job late again, of course, to the crime scene, and he has a jacket with a tag still on it from the store across the street. And that's just a terrible situation to be in when you're trying to lie. Like, why would you go and buy a jacket across the street right before you come to work if you're late? Like, that just seems like a terrible situation to have to lie your way out of, and he's terrible at it.
Nonchalantly to Iris later, and West calls him on it because it's a dumb thing to say. I just fainted.
Yeah. I was brave enough to chase criminals outside the building and then fainted once I got outside. That doesn't make any sense.
I didn't see blood. No one drew a gun on me. I just fainted. Yeah. It's great. It's really, and you're right. They're getting comedy mileage out. They're making him more charming with that stuff, and it could be irritating. It's not. I want to talk about the pseudoscience stuff. We right away, and this was another thing that I want to say the original Flash show in the '90s dealt with too, and the comics always dealt with this. So I'm glad that they got it out of the way. And I mean, just are already thinking about it of your metabolism's that fast, you got to eat all the time.
Yes, and that's a huge comic book thing.
It is.
I love that.
I can already tell, and for the same reason that Superman can, Flash gets to eat whatever he wants. But
don't you wish you had that superpower?
We got donuts, and we got pizza. I hope the donut thing becomes a regular recurring motif because he's a forensic scientist for the police. I really like the idea of he's not really a cop, but he's essentially a cop that eats donuts constantly, but he can't get fat. I think that's really funny.
Yeah, he's able to eat donuts and he doesn't look like Chief Wiggum.
Yeah, he doesn't look like Sam Burke. Yeah. So what I immediately started wondering or thinking when they dealt with that was they're not going to be anything like consistent with how much he needs to eat, are they? Like, I could already tell. Because at first he was like, oh man, you're going to need like 815 tacos. At the very end, I'm not saying this is inconsistent, how would he know? But at the very end when West brought in 3 pizzas, I was like, no, he needs like 20 pizzas, man.
Oh man!
And then I started thinking stupid things like, what is the equivalent? What is the pizza equivalent to 850 tacos?
Well, the only reason you were thinking about that was because the guy, I forget his name off the top of my head, the guy that's supposed to be Vibe. I'll just call him Vibe from now on.
Oh, are you talking about Cisco? Cisco, yeah.
He's talking about like tacos, and he's like, oh, if you add like guacamole and cheese or something, that's a whole different set of equations. They bring that up. They bring up the math aspect of it. So that's the only reason why.
And so now we're constantly gonna have to try to figure out what the equivalents are. Yeah. We're gonna have to figure out exchange rates from pizza to tacos.
In that scene, I was just thinking, like, what if a Ninja Turtle got this power? They would be in heaven.
Yeah, like super fast Ninja Turtle. Well, yeah, man, Michelangelo
eating like 800 pizzas a day. It'd be great.
I thought that Wells. Well, okay, 2 things. I thought that Wells, forgetting the fact that he is a duplicitous character who knows a bunch of stuff and is manipulating situations.
He's a master manipulator.
Master manipulator. We'll talk about that. But I felt like Wells, not to mention Cisco and the other girl, whatever her, I can't remember her name. See, I can remember Cisco, but I can't remember her name.
Killer Frost.
Okay, so Vibe and Killer Frost. See, I can only remember Cisco because of Captain Cisco from DS9, but also because we're talking about food, and Cisco is a major food distributor. So anyway, I'm finding it very easy to remember his name. Anyway, I felt like you've got these three really brilliant scientists in a room, and they need to test it before they think metabolism.
Yeah, that's a little shaky.
I had a tough time with that. Also, if Wells already knows the future, already knew Barry Allen was the Flash, he either forgot about the metabolism thing, which I don't buy, or he pretended like he didn't think of it so that he could pretend like he doesn't know the future, but any scientist thinking about these things could very easily just come out and go, you know what, I think you're going to need to eat more, and no one is going to think, oh my god, he's from the future.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could potentially think of is he didn't tell him that so they could do the treadmill experiment, because that's a reference to the cosmic treadmill, the thing that lets the Flash travel through time. So if they explain it away in a future episode to some degree, like he wanted the cosmic treadmill to be invented for that reason, that's the only thing I can think of. But I think, I'm with you, that's going to be an interesting thing to see how well the writers of the show handle making Wells a character, like how consistent they are with him knowing things. You know what I mean?
The question I had,
going to forget things when the plot needs him to and stuff like that.
And I just wondered that in that scene. That doesn't necessarily mean that they had forgotten what he knows, but they might have forgotten what he knows. And yet, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, of course, because when he talks to West, that is a masterfully written scene.
It is.
When he's telling, because what I love about it is that I am buying him. I am almost forgetting what I saw him do at the end of last episode, and then when he stabs a guy at the end of this, I'm really going, oh man, you're amazing. Because okay, the thing that they've really got right with that character is that if he was just who we think he is at the beginning of the first episode, where he feels like, where he's a scientist that accidentally created this horrible thing that happened, and now he's trying to make it right, and he's seeing a lot of Barry. He's seeing a lot of himself in Barry because Barry is being careless. He's a very sympathetic character. And yet there's this whole other thing that we don't fully understand. And so like, this is sophisticated, because especially for TV, because this is a thing that you don't see a lot, where whenever he's in a scene with a person and he tries to convince them of something, you're almost buying it, because his backstory, be it made up or it is true, but then the future thing also, whatever we're doing, like I'm buying all of it. Anyway, I thought that was, like, because what he says to West is what West needed to hear right then.
Exactly.
But he's not doing it for the reasons that it needed to happen. He's doing it because he has his own agenda.
And we'll talk about, I want to talk a lot more about his backstory and what you were saying, like how well this guy is at manipulating and playing a different person than who he is it's almost as sinister as the stabbing at the end.
Yeah.
Especially
once you find out that he does that, yeah. Especially.
Right. I want to talk about that more when I get to the best line, because the line that I chose specifically speaks to that aspect of it.
Sure.
But he is just like so good at snapping to that character and being all about the backstory that everyone thinks he has, and it's really scary. Like, that's the fact that he's able to play a character that well. I said it was almost as sinister as the stabbing. I think it's just as, if not more, sinister now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, sure. Well, because it's a master plan thing. He is playing with people's emotions, but it's better because he's playing with ours too. Why don't we go ahead and go on to best moment, worst moment, shall we, Dan? What was your favorite moment for the episode? We'll go ahead and talk about those things. Go ahead.
My favorite moment in the episode, it's kind of undisputed, was the scene with Joe and Barry at the end, where they have the pizza and they're having that talk about the father-son relationship they have, and then Joe finally says, I'm going to help you find the man that killed your father. I loved everything about that scene. I thought that the actors acted the crap out of it. I thought they were both fantastic. And Joe West, not just because of that scene, I think this episode as a whole, but that scene kind of solidified it for me. He's one of my favorite characters in the show now, and favorite actor in the show. One of my favorite actors. I love everything about that character.
I agree with you, and he wasn't 40 minutes before that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I was a little bit worried about where they were going with that. That turns a trope on its head too. We are used to in a lot of different kinds of TV show. I almost just said crime fiction, but really lots of different things. Seeing the obsessive character that has some kind of like a hit list board or something, or like a board where they're investigating something and somebody finds it and gets really worried about them. Very rarely do you see that character see that, look alarmed by it, and then at the end point to it and say, "I'm going to help you with that." That was really great. I just think this is funny. I still question the board. I've questioned this since Arrow, since we saw it there. It's 2014. He'd have all that in his computer. Why
That's true, yeah.
My favorite moment was also that what I'm calling the Barry sounds like a dad speech. I also, just for the novelty of it, thought that the dozens of multiplexes thing looked really cool.
The special effects were really good, especially when Barry was running through the crowd of them and knocking them all over. It looked fantastic.
I didn't expect to see that many of them. I was reminded of the Agent Smith and the Matrix thing, but it looked better than that. Although it helps that we don't see their faces most of the time. When they have that many of them, all you got to do is put a whole bunch of guys in that one coat. Now I don't know if it's extras or if it's digital, but however they did it, it looks really good. I will say that speaking about special effects, there is. There is one effect that I thought looked shaky, and that was at the very beginning. That fire was pretty fake looking, like.
Oh, fair enough. I didn't really notice.
That was very
very
TV CG fire, and I mean like for any regular show it's okay, but this thing for the most part I keep going, wow, that's very cinematic. You could put this on the big screen. The Flash running effects always look amazing, but then like you had that fire, and I was like, that looks a little fake. What was your did you have a worst moment this episode, Dan?
Yes, I had a worst moment. Okay, so in the gunfight that Joe West has with Multiplex, Multiplex begins multiplying and takes off his mask for no reason so everyone can figure out who he is.
On that, I guess he does.
I was like, what is he doing? This is the worst supervillain in the history of the world. He has a mask on and can multiply, so no one would ever figure out who he is. And he just takes it off.
He has one of the powers that makes it the easiest to have a secret identity. As long as you're wearing masks. Actually, it could be the worst thing to have, because there's a whole bunch of you running around, and if one of them got unmasked, everybody would know who you were, so that could be a huge liability. But why would you take your mask off?
Yeah, I was like, this guy is a complete idiot, and he's supposed to be a scientist, and him just in general was my least favorite thing about the episode, because like at the end they try to throw in something about his wife, and it's like right before he dies, they're like, I have a motivation now. And I'm like, oh, well, you died like 2 minutes after that. I kind of don't care.
That's also a thing these writers tend to do. We've had that with some kind of throwaway Arrow villains too. I wasn't surprised to see it, but I'm with you. It is, I don't know. It could have been a lot better. It's one of those things where he's just kind of the obligatory bad guy, and we need him in order for Flash to be validated in stopping petty crimes, because the idea is, but what if it turns out that somebody doing just a random petty crime that anyone could stop has superpowers? That means I gotta stop everything. So that was, I don't know. I think that eventually you're not gonna be able to keep doing that. You can't have like every petty crime that happens be caused by someone that has superpowers. Also. And we talked about this maybe being a problem or being just something really funny. The particle accelerator wave is Smallville kryptonite.
It
is. You combine it with anything to do anything, and it's always got to be, or often it looks like going to be like a theme of that has to do with the character that it already got. Now, since the guy was working on cloning, I could sort of kind of see how something that was there would maybe mix with it, but I mean, like...
Well, yeah, because that's what happened with Barry Allen, right? The chemicals related to whatever turns him into the Flash fell on him, and he was struck by lightning, so that would make him super fast,
so that makes him super fast, and so that's why this guy gets it. See, it's not a thing you question until it gives other people superpowers, and then you start questioning it. Yeah. Okay, so, Dan, here is my worst moment, and I don't know that you'll agree with me on this, but this is just how I felt about it. In general, I am, and I could be made to turn my mind around on this, and you said something that if they go there will actually excite me about this, but this is just me right now while I was watching this episode. I didn't like the flashbacks. I didn't like them at all. And
really?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I get what you're saying about like the flashbacks kind of help you to appreciate West more because when Barry was a kid, he didn't like. You didn't need flashbacks for that. Like I could have appreciated that without them. I thought the kid was not very good, and I didn't think it was written very well. I thought that the dialogue for that kid was like really I hate you over and over again. I didn't need that. I felt like it kind of undercut what they were doing just by making too big of a deal out of it. And I'm also resisting it a lot more than I would be if it weren't for the fact that it's already the Arrow formula. Can we not do flashbacks in every episode? Could we maybe next week do one that doesn't have flashback? I've always been okay with it with Arrow. I mean, I have issues with them sometimes for different reasons, and I won't go into that right now, of course. But like, I've always been okay with it with Arrow because there's an ongoing story in the past happening that is paralleling what's going on in the present, so it's two stories going on at once. I feel like this is likely to just be we just flash back to random things, and not every show's gotta have flashbacks. I mean, like the way they're doing it even looks very Arrow. I kind of feel like they're just doing it because they're used to writing like that. If it turns out that they're doing the flashbacks, and also there's just something about the fact that the show is called The Flash, and we have flashbacks in it. And every time I say flashback, I feel like I'm making a pun. If the idea is that is that they continue with the flashbacks and they actually go up through Barry's childhood, I really hope they don't do that. But if they were to do that, or even just flashback to random things that aren't always Barry, and what we're seeing is like different timelines, that could be really cool. Like they could give us like they're not yet, because obviously this is the Barry, this is the timeline that was changed, obviously. But I'm just saying that, like, if they use it to inform the future, or if we do some flash forwards, that could be really exciting. Right now, I don't feel like we need them. I say get rid of the flashbacks.
No, I can see where you're coming from. I wasn't as bothered with him as you were, because I was enjoying all the stuff with West and Barry, and I'm with you. I think some of the dialogue in those scenes wasn't very good, and I'm gonna, kind of maybe disagree with you again on John Wesley Shipp. I thought he wasn't very good in the flashback scenes that he got, and maybe it was the dialogue he was given. I didn't like a lot of the lines he had. He wasn't
there very long. The writing wasn't that good, so it's not his fault, Dan. It's not his fault. And would you at least give me? I'm fine with you not liking shit. Would you at least give me the kid's not that good?
I didn't have too much of a problem with him.
Okay, fine. I didn't like him. Anyway.
I don't know, like...
Typical child actor,
I could see where he was coming from, because, like, West, at that point in Barry's childhood, West was the guy that was saying, your dad killed your mother, you should stop.
I get it on paper, it just didn't play for me. Like, I can't believe that in the same episode I'm looking at that stuff and going, yeah, I see what you're trying to do, but I don't really buy it. And then I'm tearing up at the ending.
Yeah. No, I mean, fair enough.
I guess my point is...
I'm with you. I'll agree with you at least in this point. I think there's not really much need to do more flashbacks after this unless you're going to do some sort of thing with Iris, but I don't know what potentially that could be. I don't think there needs to be a flashback every episode. because we've already resolved the main conflicting relationship besides the Iris one from Barry's past. I don't think we need to flash back to anything else with his dad. We already know enough about that moving forward, I think, to inform
and I'm not saying they will
in the story.
2 doesn't make a pattern. Just because they've done it in the first 2 episodes doesn't mean we'll always get them. But
right, and I'm just agreeing with you, but in that I don't think there needs to be a pattern to make this story, for them to tell this story. I agree with you there.
I'm sticking to my guns on this, because if I could watch those flashbacks and not be with them and then still tear up at the end, I didn't need them at all. You know what I mean? Like obviously I didn't need to see the kid interaction stuff if the rest of it still worked. So I don't know. I wish we didn't have them. I just
thought it made West a little bit more sympathetic, because in the first episode he you get the sense that he loves Barry, obviously, but he's a little bit more, I think he's a little bit less protective of him. Well, he's still protective of him, but he's a little bit less accepting of him than Iris potentially, because Iris doesn't have this kind of out there viewpoint that Barry does.
Yeah.
But it just made their relationship more concrete for me, because West was the only person that stuck by this kid, even though he was so hateful towards him in his childhood. That makes him a much more sympathetic character to me.
Yeah, and maybe if that had been played super well, I would have agreed with you and said, it's better to see it. But this is one of those, for me, this is one of those moments of show don't tell. It's not always accurate. Is not always the way to go. Just my knowing that, I feel like, is enough. I don't feel like I need to see that played out. I feel like that's the thing that we could talk about, and we don't really need to see it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they could have written a scene in there that wasn't a flashback. I don't know.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. You're right. The information needs to be there. I don't know that I needed to see it. I don't want to harp on it. That's just how I feel.
We're just having a disagreement about how
they
it was
did it
conveyed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to comic references. Dan, I'm sure you have some.
There wasn't as many as in the first episode that I noticed.
Oh, of course not.
Which was good, because I didn't have half a page of them. There was, of course, the Flash's crazy metabolism thing. That's right on the comics. There was the reference to the cosmic treadmill, which we talked about, Stag Industries, and Multiplex. Those were all the ones that I really caught. There wasn't a whole lot of references to the things that I noticed. Did you notice anything that I might have missed?
Well, we talked about all the Firestorm stuff. I didn't notice anything other than that. I'm sure there were a couple things.
Possibly. And of course, in the comments, as always, if you guys notice anything that we missed, I'd love to know.
I'm trying really quick to look up the guy who played Stag in this, because I can't remember his name, but he's
I wrote it down. It's William Stabler.
Thank you. I can never remember his name. That was the big guest star, and then there's whoever the guy was who played Multiplex.
I don't think he's done a ton of things. I didn't write his name down because he didn't have a Wikipedia page, and I didn't bother to look at IMDb. Yeah. I figured he was kind of a newcomer to the scene. I don't think he's been in a ton of things, and honestly, he didn't really leave all that much of an impression on me because he wasn't given a lot to do. Yeah. Maybe he's a good actor outside of this material. I don't really know.
Every time I talk about him, I keep having to remind myself to call him Multiplex, because I keep wanting to call him Phantomex, and that's a different character. Okay, let's talk about predictions and hopes. So let's go to the obvious stuff first. So one of the big questions for me is, how long could Barry Allen possibly, realistically, or at least believably, keep the secret from Iris? How long is that going to go? If they actually, and part of this is again Arrow projection. But if they told us, if they had it happen next episode, I would not be that surprised. I kind of think it's going to go half the season or more. But if they did it next episode, I would not be that surprised.
I really hope they do it very soon, and it'll be interesting to see how Iris deals with that secret, and if Eddie Tharn finds out about Barry being the Flash through here to some degree eventually.
Yeah.
Because if they create a dramatic situation where it's Iris kind of needs to tell Eddie Tharn to do his job properly, if she's dishonest to everyone who's close to her, she's kind of gonna look a little unsympathetic to me. You know what I'm saying? If she's dishonest to everybody around her, I don't know, that'll make a little bit unsympathetic to me, because I don't like fundamentally dishonest people. Maybe that's just me. But I mean, and she could have good reasons for being dishonest.
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends on how they write it, obviously.
I can find fundamentally dishonest people incredibly interesting.
Right.
I can like Star Trek again. Garrick in DS9 is one of the most interesting characters ever portrayed on television. I think. Obviously Wells is like that.
And we love him, and that's the reason we love him.
But they're not trying to make him seem endearing. They're not trying to make him seem like a character.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
He's not someone you want to see date the Flash, and so they're not trying to make us think that he would be a good person to date the Flash. So when you're looking at Iris, you want her to have particular stand-up qualities because you want Barry Allen to choose a person who has those ideals and lives up to that, right? Like that's what I think. So I don't know how long they're going to hold that out. Wells, we know, is from the future. We know he's trying to protect the Flash. Here's the question. Here's one of the questions I have. Obviously, I would be very surprised if he didn't turn out to be Reverse Flash. Since we already know there is a Reverse Flash, I mean, partly because we looked at things that told us that, but also because if you know the comics and you see the backstory, you know Reverse Flash is involved. It could be a red herring. There could be some other future character that turns out to be Reverse Flash, and he's maybe even against that guy. But I don't see how that would work. It seems like that would be convoluted. What I'm wondering is what happened in the future. If he comes to the past, say his past, and thinks that he has to protect the Flash, what happened to the Flash where he needs protecting?
And that'll be interesting, because one of the cool things about the Reverse Flash in the comics, at least what I've read of Eobard Thawne in the comics when they redid him after Crisis on Infinite Earths, when Mark Waid was writing the book, Eobard Thawne was a super big fan of the Flash in the future, and he's this scientist guy. He tries to be Barry Allen in every aspect of his life, and he goes back to the past to try to meet him. And I think it's interesting that this character is trying as hard as he can to protect Barry, in kind of being a super fan in some kind of way, even if he has some sort of different motivation than he would in the comics. I think that's it could be a potentially interesting take on that relationship between the two of them. And obviously he has a fallout between, the characters that he meets. Like when Mark Waid brings Eobard Thawne into the past, he tries to be Barry Allen. He poses as him, and Wally West is like, oh my God, it's Barry Allen. And you eventually find out that it's not Barry Allen. It's actually Eobard Thawne pretending to be him. He has a psychosis where he thinks he's the Flash. So I think that would be interesting, where the Flash goes away for a really long time, and this character thinks he needs to fill that void in the future, but goes back to try to ensure that the Flash survives or something. That could be a potentially interesting thing. Like, the Flash is needed in his future. He goes back, tries to protect him, and they end up becoming mortal enemies or something.
And somehow his past is our future. His past, whatever happened to him, makes him feel like he has to do really horrible, morally reprehensible things in order to keep this really morally stalwart character around. The other question that I can't help but ask, having seen lots and lots and lots of time travel things, is: are there two Welleses? And the reason I asked that question is because, okay, so you got a guy who's from the future. We saw a date, 2024. That's either, and clearly a really important date. Something happened then. He feels like he's got to make sure that things go right with the Flash. But if he is the same person that created the Shockwave in the first place, he also is the man who created the Flash. So the question is this an imposter? Is it a version of the same guy? And did he kill himself or kidnap himself? What happened? Because he has placed himself in the timeline. What's going on? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the interesting things that I didn't really think about, one of the viewers brought up, I forget who the commenter was off the top of my head, but it was a very astute observation. When the particle accelerator, when they're watching it, when it's about to go off, and the laptop gets stolen, Eddie Tharn shows up out of nowhere to stop that guy, and he's on the scene. And both of those characters, we think, could be the Reverse Flash. So maybe Eddie Tharn is the past Wells, and he's kind of masqueraded as that CEO guy to get in that position. Because like they're both in the same place at the same time, and Eddie Tharn's there for reasons that we don't know yet. Like it seems like very coincidental, right? Like Iris's laptop gets stolen, and all of a sudden her future boyfriend shows up to stop the thief. That's really coincidental, right?
That's really interesting, and possible. But I still gotta wonder how the shockwave happened in the first timeline.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because this is the guy who caused it.
Right.
I'm very confused by that. I think it's really intriguing. I'm very interested to see how they, and I'm confident it will make sense. But I'm really interested to see how that happens, because I mean, what I'm trying to figure out is, does he go back in time to and first make sure that his past self does that, or did it happen some other way the first time, and he knows how to make sure it happens? Is it possible that there is a bit of truth in what he's saying, where he knew how to create the Flash, but he didn't know how to do it without also creating all these other supervillains? Like, is it possible that the other villains didn't exist in the other timeline? And I don't know. There's like a lot of there's a lot of different possibilities. But I mean, like, he was clearly inserted in the timeline. It's not like there's suddenly this random character who comes up who's named Wells. Everybody knows this guy. He has a staff. Like. He didn't pop up out of nowhere.
Well, he could have went far in the past, like back in the past far enough to establish that relationship with his his stature and stuff, I guess, which would be really. I mean, I could see this guy doing that. He's that methodical. Me too. Right?
Yeah, maybe he's been working on this for years, but he would have to create the thing on purpose that makes the Flash. I mean, it's really interesting.
It is really interesting.
Okay, did you have any other predictions, Dan?
We talked a lot about this before, so I'm not going to belabor my first prediction, but I really hope Joe West figures out Iris and Eddie like between this episode and now. I hope it happens as soon as possible. And I think my other prediction is I don't think Joe West survives this season. I think he's going to get killed off. I think if I was writing this show, what I would do is I would have Joe West and Barry succeed in clearing Barry's dad's name, and then have Joe West, the surrogate father that raised Barry, be killed off at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense, drama-wise, to do. Because there's no father-son stuff to do with West and Barry after Barry's dad comes back into the picture, right?
No, there's not. Unless we kill him off really fast.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he could come out and then immediately he gets killed. I mean, there's I don't know why I'm saying this. My instincts tell me he's going to be around longer than that, but you could be right. I think it's because there are characters like that I expected in Arrow to be dead already, and they're still alive. So I keep going. So I'm thinking, I don't know, man. Like I would have. I kind of expected they would have killed off Lance by now, and it's season 3, and we still got Lance. So, I don't know, and this is kind of their foil for Lance, so I'd be surprised if they did that. But it would also be smart for them to do things like that to, make me not constantly compare the two shows. There are things I'm enjoying comparing, but eventually I don't want to be able to call things just because, well, either I expect exactly the opposite of Arrow, or it's too much like Arrow. They're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Did you have any other predictions?
Those were the only predictions I thought up for this episode specifically.
Dan, what was your trivia question last time, and what is the answer, sir?
My trivia question was, actually, did we do best line?
Did we not do lines?
No, we did not yet.
Oh, I skipped lines. Yes, do lines. Okay, because you had a whole thing you wanted to talk about.
Yes.
Wow, this is, once again, longer than I expected it to be. Go ahead, Dan.
My favorite line was from Wells, and I think this is indicative of who he is. When he's talking to Stack, he says, "Spoken like a true philanthropist, or is it humanitarian? I'm sorry, I can never remember which one you're pretending to be, Simon." And that's so ironic because Wells is a fake persona in and of itself, and he's calling someone else out on being a fake persona publicly. I don't know. I just thought that paradox in what he was saying was really interesting, and the way the actor kind of came at that line, I thought was fantastic. And that whole exchange between him and Stagg, I really liked.
I did too. I didn't really have one this time. I didn't find this one especially quotable. I found myself intrigued by some people when they break can't be put back together, once again because of who's saying it, and everything he says seems to be duplicitous and possibly have a double meaning. So I'm thinking about that line, but yeah, I didn't think anything was just jumped out at me. Okay, now let's do trivia, shall we, Dan?
Yes.
What was your trivia question for last time, sir?
My trivia question last time was during one of the versions of Gorilla Grodd's origin, a meteor crashes on Earth, and in the atmosphere it splits into two pieces. One of them lands in Gorilla City, makes all the gorillas super intelligent. Another part of the meteor lands in a different part of Earth and makes a different supervillain from the DC universe super intelligent. Who was it? And the answer was Hector Hammond, the Green Lantern villain.
And that was answered first by Renwick Davis over email, and congratulations because you also got both of our questions right before anybody else happened to say them. My question from last time was not a very good question at all. It was it was because I discovered that there were more than one, and I thought there might be, and people started pointing them out, which was what other TV show before this called Metahumans, and what I was looking for was Birds of Prey. Apparently Smallville also threw that around in places, and I didn't remember that. It must have been later. And I watched later Smallville, but I don't know it as well as the early stuff. And then somebody even said, I think Static Shock, that show called them Metahumans, but I didn't know that. So anyway, Renwick Davis, once again, you said the thing I was looking for, so well done. Dan, I don't have one this week because you said it earlier, and I need to start telling people what my trivia question is so they don't reveal it. I should have told it to you so that you. But my question, I'll just tell you what it is now because we've already said it in this episode. But my question was what was Cisco's first name for Multiplex? It was Captain Clone, and that was my question. But you already said it. So So we'll only have one question you can answer this time. It's Dan's fault, and Dan. What is your question this time, sir?
I'm going kind of obscure on this one.
Oh, man.
Rage Flash on you guys. Okay, so since we got our first reference to the Cosmic Treadmill, one of my favorite Flash things, I think that the concept of that's really cool. So in the first appearance of the Cosmic Treadmill, Barry Allen and Wally West, as Kid Flash, use it to fight an alien race that conquers Earth in the future. Barry Allen goes to the future to fight the aliens, and Wally West goes to the dinosaur era because these aliens are also traveling through time and they have to fight them through time. It's a really cool story.
Awesome, yeah.
What's the name of the alien race that they're fighting?
Wow, that is out there.
It is.
That's cool.
Perfect for this show.
Well, everybody, thanks as always for watching. Sure, hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave your questions and comments, and we will tackle a bunch of those at the beginning of next show, as we always do. Dan, I'm still loving the show. I think it's quite good.
I'm loving it too, and I'm loving doing this discussion show. I think we got a lot more mileage out of this episode than I thought we would. I was just kind of latching on to the Joe West Barry stuff, but there was a lot more in here than I had initially thought about.
Well,
talking about it.
Can come to think of it, there is still even a lot of character stuff we could have talked about with Barry about like the lack of confidence and doubt stuff and how that relates to other heroes. And I mentioned I saw more Spider-Man in this and stuff like that. And that may be something we can tackle a little bit some next week because as we jumped onto all of the Wells stuff and things like that, I ended up not even going there, and that was actually one of if not my favorite things about the episode. Well, I did mention the whole Barry doesn't know how to do this yet thing, and he's trying to figure that out. But yeah, the whole he's gonna screw up if he doesn't have confidence thing is a thing I can really relate to, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, definitely, I can relate that too.
Wish we had discussed it more. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks. Sure appreciate you. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And we'll see you again next time.